After much deliberation, you've decided it would be best to home educate your child. Most of us are only familiar with the school setup, and home education is a completely new experience. Probably the most frequently asked question on any home education support group is, how do I start? To help answer that question, I've invited Karin van Oostrum. Karin is the manager of the Pestalozzi Trust and also a homeschool veteran. Karin, thank you for joining us. What do you consider as the most important first step?
The homeschooling is a journey, and a journey needs a destination and a roadmap to make it worthwhile. So the very first step that you need to take when you decide to homeschool, either whether you are starting right from scratch when your children are still small, or whether you remove them from school, is to sit down as a family all together and decide what is your end destination. Because before you are able to determine what kind of curriculum you're going to use, what kind of approach you're going to use, you have to determine what your end destination need to be. And it's so very important to do that, because by doing that, you give yourself a chance to get to know your children and to determine what their ideals and their talents are, things that they actually really want to do once in their life, and they don't want to miss doing that. So just sit down as a family and pray together and talk together and decide now, how did it come about that you end up at this stage, that you are that you've chosen against public schooling or private schooling for homeschooling. And think about which events actually persuaded you to change your course of action. And if your grandparents are going to be involved in the home education, please involve them also in these discussions, because they might also have insights in your children and in your family that you didn't know of, which can contribute to the design of your roadmap and of your master plan for your home education. Having a master plan will prevent you from taking turn-offs, which might be very costly and very might cause many tears all around along your journey. Don't think of short-term goals. For instance, I want Johnny to pass grade 4 this year. Think about long-term goals. Think about how you would like your child to turn out in 10 or 15 years. Whether you would like him to know what is right and wrong. You would like him to be able to live a meaningful life. And that takes some thinking to do. And it's very important to look far ahead. Don't look too short. A short-term goal often boomerangs and also help you prevent you from keeping your course. So after having decided on your main goal, you can decide together how you want to do it. That is the time when you can incorporate your children's ideals and all their talents, and also which character traits that you would like to develop in your children. The route can be regarded as your teaching materials, your approach, or the curriculum that you would like to use. And I don't know if maybe we can talk about deschooling, a deschooling period. Often when a child is removed from school, there is so much trauma all around. The child has withdrawn in himself, maybe because of bullying and because of always having been hurried up. A child who is in such a traumatized state can't really take in anything. So when you take your child out of school, it might be a very good idea, while you're determining your master plan and your route, just to de-school for a while and just to focus on getting who this child actually is, and trying to remember what the child was like before he went to school. That carefree child who was full of dreams and playing and singing before he went to school and he was put into a box. Try and all the means that are you know your child the best, and use all the means that you have at your at hand to get the child back to that in that relaxed state in which he can actually take in anything that you would like him to learn.
I like that you call it a roadmap, because that also means that when life happens or situations change, or you discover a new interest, you can take an alternative route. It's not set in stone and you have to go from A to B to get to C. You can first go to C and then go back to B. So I really like that you call it a roadmap. And then what you say about D-School, not even only just for the child who was traumatized, because when we started home education, my son already spent grade R and half of grade 1 in school. And we were sort of forced into home education. And I didn't D-School, I didn't think it was necessary. And then the first complaint my son had was, I don't like to be the only child in class anymore. So even that he had to get used to being at home and having me around all the time. So now I am a firm believer in de-schooling.
Yeah, and while you're speaking, I was thinking of another function of de-schooling is for the parents to actually get rid of that template in their heads. Because all of us, most of us have been through the public schooling system. And you have this matrix in your head of this is the way things are done. And unless I sit down at a desk and I spend hours at writing in books, I won't learn anything. And parents need to get rid of that. And I found in the 30 years or so that I've been involved in homeschooling, that was the most difficult thing for me. Because I used to rather like school. Not the many aspects that I didn't like, but I liked doing my work and getting everything up to scratch and so on. And it was very difficult for me to become more flexible and just relax and just accept that even though we don't follow, one can't follow a too strict program in homeschooling, because the geezer might come through the roof, or grandparents are going to come and visit, or someone is ill. And then just to be able to accept that actually everything will turn out well and nothing's going to happen, even though you're not following a strictly school type of curriculum or program. And I can also just relate from my own life an example. When my second daughter was born, I became very ill. So I was bedridden for about a year. That meant that my 6-year-old oldest daughter had to take care of the household. She had to do the cooking and the washing, and school consisted of she doing an hour or so of maths every day with me on the bed, and I reading to her an hour or two. And it actually became one of our best years in homeschooling. Before that, we also used a very strict curriculum. At that time, there was only one curriculum available to be bought in South Africa, but we believed that actually this is the way to do things. And after that year, we realized that actually life is the main teacher in homeschooling. And children need to learn all these life skills, and these are life skills they can only learn in a family when life actually happens. And that actually decided us to take to recalculate and determine our destination more clearly.
The South African Schools Act states that children must attend school, but they do allow for home education. What are the legal aspects that parents need to be aware of?
Okay, to start out, let us look at what the law actually says. According to the SA Schools Act in Section 3, as you've mentioned, a child is liable for compulsory schooling from the first school day of the year in which he turns 7 up till the last school day of the year in which he turns 15. And parents are responsible to send their children to school. According to the law, and I quote, any other person or parent who without just cause prevents a learner who is subject to compulsory attendance from attending a school is guilty of an offence and liable on conviction to a fine or to imprisonment for a period not exceeding 6 months. By the way, it would have been very helpful if the state had ordained compulsory education instead of compulsory schooling. Surely education can be obtained in many other ways and not only by attending school. That would also be more in line, would have been more in line with what the Constitution demands, namely that everyone is entitled to a basic education. But that's just a sideline. There is another section of the SA Schools Act, that is section 51, which deals specifically with home education. Section 51 says that a homeschooling parent may apply for registration for his home learner. Homeschooling is defined in section 51 as schooling or education at the child's own home. So you may make use of a tutor in your home, or someone else like a grandparent or an aunt or someone who lives in, and even someone who just comes to your house to teach your child, but it excludes centers and teaching centers or tutor centers and cottage schools. So the learner must be registered if the head of department regards it as in the best interest of the child. And another condition is the minimum requirements of the curriculum in public schools must be met, and the curriculum must be of a standard not inferior to the standard in public schools. A child who is registered for homeschooling is absolved from the obligation to attend school. So he need not attend school then, and he can't be the parents can't be prosecuted. So according to the law, you have to register your child with the provincial education department. But many parents, the majority of parents in South Africa do not register their children. And you may ask now, why does that happen? Because surely they might be prosecuted. The reason why the reason why the majority of parents don't do that is because the registration requirements, complying with the registration requirements would mean that they would actually be infringing on their and the children's right to education. They would say, parents have said to me before, for instance, what is the use of homeschooling your child if the child has to follow the state curriculum, and if they have to follow the state assessment requirements? They could just as well leave the child at school then. And because it's exactly those curriculum requirements and values that the parents have been trying to steer away from. And another problem that many homeschooling parents have with registering their children is the fact that departmental officials have to come and make a home visit before registration can be granted. Many parents find that they don't want their privacy to be intruded on like this, and they feel that the information that the official needs can actually be obtained in many other ways, except not specifically by a home visit. And a major problem with these home visits is that there are no set standards of what the home or the premises or the site, as they call it, need to comply with. So for the one official, you have to have a specific room set aside, especially for home education. For the other one, a table is enough. For another one, you have to have very adequate lighting, but we don't know what kind of lighting they actually require. And for another one, there must not be any washing or any bottles inside, because then they say this is a home of alcoholics, and they won't approve the registration. So it is very problematic in that sense, that there are no set standards, and that is something that needs to change in the law. The Bella Bill, as you know, tries to enforce even more requirements on homeschooling parents, and it's very clear that the state wants more control over homeschooling parents, what they do and how the approach that they use, and they want to steer everybody into the same course of action as like the public schools. So when we saw in 1996, after the Schools Act was promulgated, the way that the requirements actually was formulated, we realized that homeschooling parents in South Africa were going to need a legal defense fund. So that is when we started the Pestalozzi Trust, the Legal Defense Fund, in 1998. And the Pestalozzi Trust is the legal defense fund for home and small school education. And we support and defend homeschooling parents, and we support alternative education in whichever way that it manifests. Parents can join the Pestalozzi Trust at a cost. All the details are on our website, www.pestalozzi.org. But they should make sure that they join before they end up in trouble, because it's very sad if we can't help a parent or a family or a small school who are in trouble and they're not members of the trust at that stage. And members receive an emergency number which they can call, which is available 24/7, and we handle the problems, and we are very good at keeping our members out of court.
Just to recap, 3 important things that parents need to consider before they home educate their child. Number 1, the roadmap. Get to know your children, know where you're going. Number 2, be aware of the legal requirements and make an informed choice. And then number 3, choose a curriculum or an approach. And while you're deschooling, do your research. Do you agree?
I agree, yeah. Thank you.